Chapter 1. Early Morning, Quiet Strength. The sun rose gently over the hills, casting a golden light across the quiet town. Thomas Gray, a man in his early 40s with rough hands and kind eyes, was already awake. The soft hum of the kettle in the kitchen was the only sound in the small house. He moved quietly through the house, careful not to wake his wife, Sarah, or their 2 children, Jacob, 10, and Lily, 6. He packed Jacob's lunch, peanut butter and jelly, apple slices, and a small note that read, "You're braver than you think." As the toast popped up, Lily came in, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy, can you braid my hair today?" "Of course, sweetheart." He knelt and gently combed through her hair, braiding it slowly. It wasn't perfect, but she smiled at her reflection. Sarah entered the kitchen, tying her robe. "You didn't have to do all this." "I like to," Thomas said simply. "Mornings are when I feel closest to all of you." He kissed her forehead and grabbed his tool belt. Thomas worked as a carpenter and part-time delivery driver. The pay wasn't much, but the work was honest. As he stepped out the door, Jacob called, "Wait, Dad!" He ran out with a paper in his hand. "I got an A on my science project." Thomas bent down and high-fived him. "That's my boy. I knew you could do it." Jacob beamed. "I want to be like you when I grow up." Thomas smiled, heart full. "Just be kind and work hard. That's enough." He walked to the bus stop with Jacob and waved as the bus pulled away, then headed to the old truck waiting for him in the driveway. His day had just begun. Chapter 2. The Carpenter's Hands. Thomas's workshop smelled of sawdust and pine. Inside, morning light spilled across shelves of tools, jars of screws, and neatly stacked planks of wood. He ran his fingers over a slab of maple, imagining it as the top of a table he was building for a young couple who had just bought their first home. Each groove and cut was done by hand. No machines, no shortcuts. That was Thomas's way. While working, Thomas received a call from his friend Louis at the delivery company. "We're short a driver again. Can you help this afternoon?" Thomas hesitated. That meant finishing the table late, but he needed the extra money. "I'll be there," he said. He worked faster, sanding and shaping the wood, with care but urgency. At noon, he wrapped the table in a blanket and loaded it into his truck. The couple greeted him with excited smiles. "Did you make this by hand?" the woman asked, running her fingers over the smooth finish. "Yes," Thomas said. "It's beautiful," her partner added. "Glad it's going somewhere it'll be loved." He left, heart lightened, and headed to the delivery job. At 6:30, Thomas returned home, muscles aching. Sarah greeted him with a warm plate of stew. Lily showed him her drawing, a house with a man holding hands with 2 children. "That's you," she said. He smiled. "Looks like I'm the lucky one." That night, he scribbled in a small notebook he kept by his bed. "Hands that build also carry not just wood, but love, meals, and dreams." Chapter 3. The Surprise Storm. It was a Saturday when the storm hit. The morning had been clear, and Thomas had planned to repair the roof on the shed. But by afternoon, dark clouds rolled in, wind howled, and rain lashed against the windows. Lily clung to Sarah as thunder roared. Jacob tried to act brave, but flinched with every flash. Thomas lit candles and brought out a board game. Storm or no storm, tonight we play. They gathered in the living room. Lily laughed as her dad made silly voices for each character on the board. Sarah watched him, love in her eyes. But suddenly there was a loud crack. A branch had snapped and hit the side of the house. Water began dripping from the ceiling near the back door. Thomas jumped up, grabbed a bucket and a roll of tape. "I'll be back," he said. He put on his boots and coat and climbed into the storm. With a flashlight in his mouth and tarp in his hands, he worked quickly to patch the roof. The wind tugged at him and rain soaked through his clothes. When he came back inside, soaked and cold, Jacob ran over. "You fixed it?" "For now," Thomas said, shivering. Sarah handed him a towel. "You didn't have to go out in that." "Yes, I did." He looked around at his family. "I always will." That night, they fell asleep with candles flickering and the sound of the rain softening. Chapter 4. The Trouble at School. It began with a quiet dinner. Jacob, usually excited to share stories about school, was unusually quiet. He picked at his mashed potatoes, his eyes lowered, barely touching his dinner. Thomas noticed immediately. "Everything okay, buddy?" "It's fine." He hesitated. Thomas didn't push. He had learned that sometimes silence needed space before it opened up. Later, after dishes were done and Lily was working on a puzzle with Sarah, Thomas sat on Jacob's bed and waited. Jacob climbed under his blanket, holding his stuffed dinosaur tightly. "Dad, there's this boy, Ben. He keeps calling me names. Today, he pushed me. I fell. My backpack spilled everywhere." Thomas's heart ached. He kept his voice steady. "Did anyone see?" "A few kids laughed, but no teacher." Thomas nodded slowly. "Thank you for telling me. That was really brave." The next morning, Thomas walked Jacob to school, something he hadn't done in a while. They held hands quietly. Once there, Thomas asked to speak to Jacob's teacher. She listened, concerned, and promised to look into it. But Thomas wasn't finished. That evening, he found Ben's father's phone number in the school directory. Instead of anger, Thomas brought empathy. "Hi, Mr. Hargrove. This is Thomas Gray, Jacob's dad. I was hoping we could talk for a few minutes." Surprised but receptive, Mr. Hargrove agreed. They met at the park that weekend, while their boys played nearby. Ben scowled at Jacob at first, but under the watch of both fathers, he softened. Thomas and Mr. Hargrove spoke calmly, exchanging stories about their sons and their own childhoods. "I think Ben is having a hard time since the move," Mr. Hargrove admitted. "New town, new school. I'm doing my best, but it's just me right now." "I understand," Thomas said gently. "Let's help them both." That following Monday, the school counselor visited Jacob's class to talk about kindness and inclusion. Thomas didn't tell Jacob what he had done, but that Friday, Jacob came home with a smile. "Dad, Ben shared his colored pencils with me. We even played soccer together." Thomas ruffled Jacob's hair. "That's the power of understanding, buddy." That night, he wrote in his notebook, "Children are small mirrors. If we want to see more kindness in the world, we must first show them how to reflect it. Chapter 5. A Hard Promise. A week later, Thomas got a call from his younger sister, Mary. Their mother had fallen ill again. Not serious this time, but she needed help getting to her appointments. "I hate to ask," Mary said over the phone, "but I'm swamped with work. Could you drive her on Wednesday?" Thomas looked at the calendar. Wednesday was Lily's school performance, the one she'd been talking about for weeks. "I'll figure something out," he told Mary. That night, Thomas explained the situation to Sarah. "You should go," she said gently. "Your mother needs you." "But Lily," he began. "She'll understand." Still, Thomas found it hard. The next morning, he sat with Lily at breakfast and told her the truth. "I might not make it to your show. Grandma needs me that day." Lily frowned, spoon frozen in mid-air. "But I've been practicing." Thomas took her hand. "I know, and I'm so proud of you. But sometimes being there for family means making hard choices." Lily was quiet, then nodded slowly. "Okay, but promise you'll watch the video?" "I promise." On Wednesday, Thomas helped his mother into the car and drove her to the clinic. He waited patiently through checkups, blood work, and prescriptions. All the while he checked the time, imagining Lily on stage, singing her heart out. That evening, when he returned home, Lily ran to him with her tablet. "Watch now," she said, eyes bright. They sat together on the couch. Sarah played the video. Lily stood in the middle row, her voice clear and sweet. Thomas didn't say anything until it was over. Then he hugged her tight. "You were amazing." "Did you really like it?" "I loved it, and I kept my promise." Later, in his notebook, he wrote, "Sometimes being a good father means missing moments, but it never means missing love." Chapter 6. The Broken Table. The call came late on a Wednesday. It was Mrs. Delaney, the sweet old woman who always gave Thomas cookies. "Thomas, I'm so sorry to bother you after hours," she said with a shaky voice. "My dining table just gave out. One of the legs broke. It's from my grandmother's house, and I—" "Say no more," he interrupted gently. "I'll be there first thing in the morning." He looked tired as he hung up the phone, but there was no hesitation in his voice. That table mattered to her, and so it mattered to him. At dawn, Thomas packed his tools and drove across town to Mrs. Delaney's house. She greeted him in a robe, her hands wringing nervously. "I didn't want to throw it out, but I don't have much hope." Thomas knelt by the table, inspecting it carefully. It was a round oak table, hand-carved, worn with time. He gently ran his fingers over the broken leg and smiled. "She's not done yet," he said. "She just needs a little help." He spent 3 hours there, carefully reinforcing the structure, replacing the cracked dowel joints, and sealing the wood with a warm stain that matched the original finish. He worked slowly, talking to Mrs. Delaney about the memories she'd made at that table. "I brought my baby home from the hospital and laid her here while I folded laundry," she laughed softly. "She's 50 now." When Thomas stood back and let her see the final result, her eyes welled with tears. "You didn't just fix it, you brought it back to life." He gave a small, modest smile. "That's what carpenters do," he said. Later that week, Lily asked Thomas if he could help her with her school project, a handmade birdhouse. Thomas was exhausted. He had worked 6 days straight between the delivery job and the workshop, but when he saw her hopeful face, he smiled. "I'd love to," he said. They stayed up late in the garage, working side by side. Lily held the nails while Thomas hammered them in. She painted it bright yellow with blue trim. When it was done, she hugged him tightly. "This is the best thing I've ever made," she beamed. Thomas gently touched the roof. "It's strong," he said, "just like you." As the school week ended, Thomas got a phone call from the principal. Jacob had stood up for another student who was being bullied. He didn't use violence. He just stepped in and said, "We don't treat people like that." And it worked. Thomas smiled and whispered to himself, "That's my boy." That evening, he sat down at the kitchen table with Sarah and quietly said, "We're doing something right." She reached for his hand and squeezed it. "You are." In his notebook that night, Thomas wrote, "What's built with time, love, and quiet strength doesn't fall easily. A home, a child, a table, a life." Chapter 7. Full Circle. Spring brought warmth to the small town, and with it came a feeling of new beginnings. Thomas was in his workshop, polishing the last edge of a walnut bench he had built for the church garden, when the phone rang. Again. This time, it was the mayor. "Thomas, we're organizing a community event next month. A celebration of the people who quietly hold our town together. You've been nominated for the Heart of the Town Award." Thomas paused, unsure what to say. "I'm honored, but I don't need an award to do what is right." "I know," the mayor said. "That's exactly why people chose you." Word spread quickly, and neighbors stopped by to congratulate him. Mrs. Lang brought over a small bouquet of lilies. Mrs. Delaney baked a cake. Even Jacob's teacher wrote a note thanking him for raising a boy who knows how to be kind. On the evening of the event, Thomas wore his one good suit. Sarah adjusted his tie, and Lily gave him a small pin she had made, a wooden heart with his initials carved inside. "You're the best man I know," she whispered. At the town square, lights strung across trees and laughter filled the air. The mayor stood at the microphone and spoke about the people who shaped the town not with power, but with quiet service. Then he called Thomas forward. The applause was overwhelming. Thomas stood there, humble and still, his hat in his hand. "I'm not used to speaking," he said, clearing his throat, "but I want to say this. I've never done anything alone. Every nail I've hammered, every table I've fixed, every lesson I've tried to teach, it's all been part of something bigger. My wife, my children, this town. You've made me who I am." People rose to their feet. The children clapped loudest. Thomas smiled, tears quietly shining in his eyes. That night, after the lights were taken down and the square grew quiet, Thomas walked home with his family beneath a sky full of stars. Jacob rode on his shoulders. Lily held his hand. Sarah walked beside him, her head resting briefly against him. Back home, Thomas took out his notebook and wrote the final line. A good life isn't built all at once. It's carved slowly by hands that give, a heart that listens, and days full of small, honest work. And with that, he closed the book. Thanks for watching. Take action today, not tomorrow. Press subscribe. And let's keep learning together. You're doing great. See you in the next one. Stay strong.